Brexit trade talks have seen Michel Barnier outdone by David Frost as he struggled to get the best of his counterpart, a Brexiteer MP told Express. The Brexit transition period deadline is approaching as a trade deal between the UK and the EU remains in the balance. Brussels wants to keep access to UK fishing waters, and also wants Prime Minister Boris Johnson to accept a level playing field on regulation. EU negotiator Michel Barnier has been locked in talks with David Frost, the UK negotiator, for months. Conservative MP and Brexiteer Andrew Bridgen told Express that Mr. Barnier has struggled to get the upper hand over Mr. Frost. He said, "Barnier is an interesting character. But he has struggled with David Frost. He clearly preferred negotiating with Ollie Robbins and Theresa May's team, and he has struggled with the consistency of Frost. He has found these negotiations far more difficult. Ultimately, Barnier will be feeding back to his EU allies. Ultimately, his superiors will decide whether they want a free trade agreement." Earlier this year, Mr. Bridgen blamed Mrs. May's negotiating strategy for the deadlock in talks. The Conservative backbencher argued that the former Prime Minister's repeated extensions signaled weakness which handed Brussels a key advantage. He told Express in June, "The fact is the EU has been spoiled during the negotiations for the withdrawal agreement by Theresa May. Now they have David Frost to deal with, who is consistent." During negotiations for a withdrawal agreement, Mrs. May extended the deadline twice, and also saw her deal defeated in the House of Commons 3 times. The first extension was granted on March 21, 2019. The UK and the EU agreed to extend Article 50 until either May 22, subject to MPs approving the withdrawal agreement, or failing that until April 12. After MPs rejected the deal for the third time, Prime Minister May wrote to President of the European Council Donald Tusk requesting a second extension until June 30, 2019. Mr. Johnson also needed an extension before the UK eventually left the EU in January. Mr. Bridgen added that the extensions only helped the EU in talks. He said, "We extended and extended, but what did that get us? Nothing. You can understand why the EU, thinking every time they've given us a deadline we've extended under Theresa May, you can't blame them for trying with Johnson." Vice President of British Conservatives in Paris, Paul Thompson, recently claimed in an interview that the Irish border became a trap which Mrs. May fell into.